I have a very, very interesting story. It is called Early Days in Murchison, the Unfinished Journal of George McNee. He lived from 1880 to 1946 in Murchison, New Zealand. The introduction says, George McNee was the sixth of 9 children born in Murchison, New Zealand to Robert McNee and Jane Russell. They were in Murchison from 1877 onwards, remaining for the rest of their lives. Robert McNee convened the first Murchison Library Committee in 1878 and was librarian for 28 years. A photo of him hangs in the present Murchison Library. George McNee's sister Jessie McNee was in charge of Murchison Post Office, which was in the McNee home. This served as the post office until 1911 in Murchison. A McNee store still stands in Murchison today. It was once called McNee Bazaar and escaped a huge fire in 1914. It has been remodelled from time to time and now serves as a supermarket. Chapter 1. Murchison in the 1880s. I was ushered into the world on 19th of July 1880. My birthplace was a small mining township called Hampton, as there was another township of the same name in Otago. The name of where I was born got changed to Murchison, so I will refer to it by this name. The township, as I remember it first, was being moved from its original site, a low-lying piece of flat land at the junction of the Buller and Tikitiki rivers. These two large rivers were gradually encroaching on it, and at frequent intervals flooding it with muddy water. The only place I actually remember being moved was one hotel, possibly the last place to be shifted. I do not remember how this was done. I think it was divided into sections, put onto a large roller and pulled by horses, the only power available in those days. The blacksmith's shop, a cobbler's, and 3 or 4 private dwellings, 2 stores and 2 hotels were all that were in the township of Murchison in the 1880s. It was really kept going by the gold miners who worked in the creeks and gullies, winning alluvial gold from the rich gravel deposits. They provided interesting and amusing incidents over the years until the gold became less plentiful and they gradually drifted away or passed on. Chinamen and all, the place changed and grew, becoming a farming community. Murchison at this time was cut out of virgin forest, with beech trees lying one across another along the road and almost up to the back door of all the dwellings. The mothers could get firewood very easily in those days, but the timber was certainly a headache for the men who wished to clear enough land for a garden or to grow hay or to feed the animals over the long cold winter. It cost £70 to £80 per acre to get it to be ploughable. The greatest difficulty was in getting rid of the huge stumps and trunks of the trees, as they would stay there for ages and not rot. The wood would not burn well unless it was split and stacked for some time in the sun to dry out. The stumps were dug all around, the roots cut, and large levers, small trees or saplings, were used to lift them out of their bed. Then immense quantities of the split timber were stacked around and fires lit. These burnt for days as more split wood was piled on until all that was left was a huge pile of cinders that made splendid manure for the ground. It was easy to see where one of these fires had been, for the grass that grew there had a beautiful dark green foliage, and potatoes would grow there particularly well. The wages of the ordinary workmen were 8 shillings a day. These were fine men. Their word was their bond. Fighting was looked on as a necessity by all hands, miners and others, and it was quite usual for us children to witness fighting, especially on court day, Christmas holidays, or whenever there was occasion for the miners to come into the township in any number. 6, 8, or even more would be fighting. over some argument they had while in their cups or over a drink. Much of our time was spent out of doors. The beautiful bird life was a study on its own, and we learned to love birds, to know their songs, and to wonder at their habits and their way of life. There were parakeets with green, yellow and red plumage, thousands it seemed, flying from branch to branch to find berries that suited their taste. Their whistle and chatter made the bush ring. If I put into a cage a bird like this, they would be taught to talk. I knew of a couple who had one. The husband would be out grooming his horses, getting ready for a day of work. His wife would call breakfast Frank. Soon, the parakeet learned the call, and Frank would be quite baffled as to whether it was the bird or his wife calling him. Then there was the tui, with its beautiful plumage and white tassel under its beak. It is known as the parson bird. The noisy kaka, the robin, the pigeon. Pigeon was a quiet bird and favoured for making a pot of soup. The silver eye, the weka, these were common birds. The weka are very inquisitive and would take anything shiny, a spoon, a fork, a watch. I have heard that they would smack a watch against a tree, perhaps to find out what was making it tick. These birds were also very quiet. The flora of the virgin forest around us was wonderful. The stately pines, the matai, the black pine, the kahikatea, the rimu, all reared their huge trunks far above the birch and beech and other trees. Then there were panga, with their huge drooping leaves and their fronds still in curl, springing up from the centre. The new timber mills had not yet started. There were large areas of forest. All timber cut in those days was pit sawn by two men working together. Well, that's a sample of the story Early Days in Murchison, Unfinished Journal of George McNee, who lived from 1880 to 1946. So if you would like a bit more of the story, just let me know and I can tell you how to get hold of the story.